In the quiet expanse of Cass County, Missouri, the woods keep their secrets. It's a place of calm, where the noise of the world fades, replaced by the steady rhythm of nature. On April 3, 2017, a local man walked these woods, his eyes scanning the forest floor, not for trouble, but for mushrooms. He was focused on the earth, on the signs of new growth after a long winter. But what he found was a remnant of death. Partially buried beneath the decay of the seasons was a human skull. The discovery was jarring, a violation of the forest's peace. He immediately backed away and called the authorities, who descended on the remote location, cordoning it off and beginning a slow, methodical search. The next day, their search uncovered a second set of human remains nearby. The questions were immediate and deeply unsettling. Who were these two souls left behind in the dirt? And what kind of monster had put them there, discarding them in the same isolated patch of earth? Welcome to Crime Scene. Our goal is to navigate the complex timelines of cold cases, to understand the pursuit of justice, and to honor the victims whose stories demand to be told. Two young women, separated by nearly a decade, were found in the same makeshift grave, but the connection between them was a man who had been hiding in plain sight. What would you do if the system failed to stop a predator you knew was dangerous? Stay with us as we piece together a puzzle of obsession, violence, and a family's refusal to give up hope. Before she was a name in a case file, Jessica Runions was a daughter, a sister, and a friend, known for her bright, magnetic energy. At 21, she was stepping into a future she was building for herself. Hard-working and dedicated, she had just earned a promotion to a management position and was making plans to study journalism in college. Her family described her as the kind of person others were naturally drawn to, vibrant, full of life, and fiercely loyal to the people she loved. Her parents, Jamie and John Michael, knew her as dependable to a fault. She was in constant contact with them, a steady presence in their lives. That unwavering connection was the foundation of their family, a bond that would soon be tested in the most unimaginable way. On the evening of September 8, 2016, Jessica attended a gathering at a friend's house in Grandview, Missouri. Among the attendees was Kyler Yost, a man she knew as a childhood friend of her boyfriend. As the night wore on, the atmosphere began to change. Witnesses later recalled that Yost was drinking heavily, his behavior becoming increasingly erratic. He focused his attention on Jessica, growing possessive and argumentative. The tension was palpable, a dark undercurrent to the social gathering. Despite the obvious friction between them, as the party wound down, Jessica was seen leaving with Yost. They walked out of the house and got into her black 2012 Chevrolet Equinox, disappearing into the night. It was the last time anyone besides the man in the passenger seat would see her alive. The next morning, a sense of unease began to creep into the Runions household. Jessica had a follow-up doctor's appointment scheduled for a recent appendectomy. It wasn't an appointment she would ever miss. Her mother, Jamie, called her phone, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Texts went unanswered. This was not like Jessica. The hours ticked by, each one filled with a mounting dread that twisted in her mother's stomach. Every possible excuse, every rationalization eventually gave way to a terrifying certainty. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Trusting a mother's intuition that cuts through all logic, Jamie Runions picked up the phone, her hands trembling, and reported her daughter missing to the police. The search for Jessica had officially begun, but for her family, the nightmare had already taken hold. Less than 48 hours after Jessica Runions was last seen, a call came in to the Kansas City Fire Department. A vehicle was ablaze, abandoned in a wooded area near an underpass. When the flames were extinguished, authorities confirmed the worst. The scorched metal shell was all that remained of Jessica's Chevrolet Equinox. The vehicle was empty. The discovery was a clear and brutal message. Any lingering hope that this was a simple case of a young woman needing time away was instantly erased. The fire was an act of destruction, a deliberate attempt to obliterate evidence. This was no longer a search for a missing person. It was now a homicide investigation. With the car found, the focus of the investigation narrowed with incredible speed onto one man, Kyler Yost. He was the last person seen with Jessica, and witnesses confirmed he left the party with her in that very vehicle. On September 11th, just one day after the SUV was found, police located and arrested Yost in Benton County, Missouri. He had visible burns on his body, a damning piece of physical evidence, but with no sign of Jessica, they couldn't charge him with her disappearance. Instead, he was charged with knowingly burning her vehicle. While investigators questioned him about where Jessica was, Yost remained evasive, offering nothing. The key suspect was in custody, but the central mystery remained locked behind his silence. As detectives dug into Kyler Yost's background, they uncovered a history that sent a shockwave through the investigation. This was not his first time at the center of a young woman's disappearance. For 9 long years, the community of Belton, Missouri, had been haunted by the cold case of 17-year-old Kara Kopetsky. She had vanished in May of 2007, and the last person known to have had contact with her was her ex-boyfriend, Kyler Yost. He was, and had always been, the only person of interest in her case. The parallels between the two cases were undeniable and deeply disturbing. Kara Kopetsky, like Jessica, had been involved with Yost and had tried to distance herself from him. Her disappearance on May 4, 2007, came just days after she filed a restraining order against him. In it, she detailed a pattern of controlling and violent behavior, including accusations that he had kidnapped her. For 9 years, her family had searched for answers, living in a state of suspended grief, while the man they believed was responsible walked free. Now, with Jessica gone, investigators were faced with a terrifying possibility. This wasn't a tragic coincidence. They were looking at a clear pattern of predatory violence, and the disappearances of 2 women, nearly a decade apart, were now fused into one urgent, overarching inquiry. With Kyler Yost held on an arson charge but no new leads on Jessica's location, the official large-scale search was soon suspended. For the authorities, the case had hit a wall, but for the Runyan's family, giving up was not an option. They refused to let Jessica's memory fade into a cold case file. Their home, once a place of family comfort, was transformed into a command center. The walls were lined with maps of Cass and Jackson counties, marked with grids and highlighted sections. Every day, they coordinated with an army of volunteers, friends, neighbors, and strangers moved by their plight, organizing search parties that combed through fields, forests, and waterways. They lived in a state of constant motion, fueled by a sliver of hope and an unbreakable determination to bring their daughter home. It was a grueling, soul-crushing effort, a public display of a private family's deepest pain. For 7 months, they searched. 7 months of agonizing uncertainty, of holding their breath with every phone call and steeling themselves against every false lead. They waited for a breakthrough, praying for an answer while dreading what that answer might be. That breakthrough finally came on April 3, 2017. As we saw at the beginning of our story, a man hunting for mushrooms stumbled upon a human skull. When authorities arrived, they knew this could be the discovery the Runyans and Kopetsky families had been waiting for. The area was sealed off, and a meticulous search began. The next day, their efforts yielded a second skull, found nearby. The location, as prosecutors would later note, was a place Yost knew well, one of his spots. The remains were carefully transported to the Jackson County Medical Examiner's office, where the difficult task of identification began. For the families, it was the start of one final agonizing wait. On April 6th, just 3 days after the initial discovery, the first confirmation came. One set of remains belonged to Jessica Runyans. Months later, the second set was positively identified as Kara Kopetsky. The horrifying truth was now undeniable. 2 young women, taken nearly a decade apart, had been left in the same desolate place by the same man. The discovery brought a devastating end to years of uncertainty. Their daughters had been found. It was the worst possible news, yet it provided a tragic, necessary closure and cleared the path for the final pursuit of justice. The strength shown by the Runyans and Kopetsky families is truly incredible. Let us know in the comments how their dedication to their daughters inspires you. And if you're finding this story important, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to support our work. In October 2017, With the remains of his victims identified, Kyler Yost was formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, but the path from charge to trial was anything but straightforward. The case was plagued by years of legal delays, motions for a change of venue due to the intense media coverage, and competency evaluations for Yost. The prosecution also faced a major setback in 2018 when a key witness, Yost's half-brother, Jessup Carter, died by suicide while in custody. Carter had previously told police that Yost had confessed to strangling Jessica, and his death removed a critical piece of testimony from the board. When the trial finally began in April 2021, the prosecution faced a significant challenge. There was no direct forensic evidence, like DNA, linking Yost to the killings. Instead, they built their case on a mountain of circumstantial evidence. They painted a portrait of Yost as a pathologically jealous and controlling man who flew into a rage when the women in his life tried to leave him. The foundation of their case was Yost's own words. Over the years, he had confessed to at least 6 different people. Jurors heard from friends and acquaintances who testified that Yost had admitted to the killings. The most powerful piece of evidence was a 2011 FBI wiretap recording captured during a separate investigation in which Yost appeared to confess to strangling Kara Kopetsky, saying he had choked her until she was gone. Yost's defense team fired back, attacking the integrity of the police work. They argued the investigation was suspect-driven, claiming that law enforcement had zeroed in on Yost from the very beginning and failed to properly investigate other leads. They presented an alternate theory, attempting to shift the blame for the murders onto Yost's deceased half-brother, Jessup Carter. They suggested Carter was the real killer, a convenient but unsubstantiated claim against a man who could no longer defend himself. The trial reached its dramatic peak when Kyler Yost took the stand in his own defense. In a calm and steady voice, he denied any involvement in the deaths of Jessica Runyons and Kara Kopetsky. When confronted with the numerous confessions he had made over the years, Yost offered a stunning explanation. He claimed it was all an act. He told the jury he was simply trying to impress an ex-girlfriend who he believed was attracted to his dark reputation. He wasn't confessing to murder, he claimed. He was just playing a part. The jury was left to decide, was Kyler Yost a victim of his own foolish bravado, or was he a calculated predator trying to lie his way out of 2 murders? After a 9-day trial, the case went to the jury. For 15 hours, they deliberated, weighing the mountain of circumstantial evidence against the defense's claims of a flawed investigation. Finally, they returned. The courtroom held its breath as the verdict was read. In the death of Kara Kopetsky, they found Kyler Yost guilty of the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter. For the death of Jessica Runyons, they found him guilty of second-degree murder. While it wasn't the first-degree murder conviction prosecutors had hoped for in Kara's case, a reflection perhaps of the decade-old evidence, the verdict was an affirmation. After years of evading accountability, Yost was found responsible for both deaths. During the sentencing phase, the families were finally given the chance to confront the man who had caused them a decade of unimaginable pain. Jessica's mother, Jamie Runyons, spoke of the longest 4 years and 7 months of her life, a constant, unending search for her daughter. Kara's mother, Rhonda Beckford, described her family's ordeal as a 10-year nightmare. Their statements were not just expressions of grief, but powerful testaments to their daughters' lives and their own relentless fight for this day in court. The jury recommended the maximum possible sentences for the convictions, and on June 7, 2021, the judge agreed. Kyler Yost was sentenced to 15 years for manslaughter and 30 years for second-degree murder, with the sentences to be served consecutively for a total of 45 years in prison. Yost's legal team would later file an appeal, but in August 2023, the Missouri Court of Appeals denied all points and affirmed the judgment. The legal battle was officially over. The man who had haunted 2 families for over a decade would remain behind bars. The case against Kyler Yost is a harrowing chronicle of loss, but it is also a testament to the enduring power of familial love and the relentless pursuit of justice. His violent actions stole the futures of 2 young women and inflicted years of pain on their families and community. The investigation stands as a crucial lesson on the importance of recognizing patterns of domestic abuse and the connections that can link cases over many years. The perseverance of the Runions and Kopetsky families transformed their private grief into a public fight, ensuring a dangerous predator was finally held accountable. Ultimately, this story belongs to them. Jessica Runions and Kara Kopetsky were more than victims. They were bright, beloved young women whose lives were cut short. Their memories are honored not just in the verdict, but in the fight for justice that was waged in their names. The stories of Jessica and Kara remind us why we must never give up the fight for justice. If you want to see more deep dives into cases like this, please subscribe to Crime Scene and hit the notification bell. Share this video to help keep their memories alive. Thank you for watching.